In today's video, I'm going to show you how to track down and find engine oil or fluid leaks on your car or truck. So the last thing you want to do is misdiagnose an oil leak, do a repair, and then find out you still have an oil leak. So I'm going to walk you step by step through that process of figuring that out. All right, so before we diagnose the oil leak on my BMW, I wanted to take a moment to thank our sponsor today. Gunk is sponsoring the video. They supplied all the brake clean and parts cleaner and engine degreasers. One of the processes of diagnosing oil leaks is cleaning everything up. So Gunk really shines at that. They're really going to help us cut through that oil, grease, and grime and get that nice and clean so we can properly diagnose this vehicle. So I'd like to thank them for sponsoring the video. I will leave links for it down in the description. Now with that being said, let's head to the diagnosis. So when it comes to diagnosing your car or truck, one of the first things you want to do is you want to get some of the engine cover off so you can actually figure out where the leak is. On every car or truck, it's going to be different. Some of them have bolts like this one has. Some of them have clips. Go ahead and remove the covers off of your vehicle. So part of diagnosing oil leaks is getting underneath the vehicle. So I'm using floor jacks and jack stands and jacking my vehicle up. Make sure you use the proper jacking techniques for your vehicle and get it off the ground. On any modern day car is take off the undershield belly pans they have here. They can be held on with bolts and fasteners or clips. So you want to take that off on whatever type of vehicle you're working on. Take that off the perimeter and drop this down. All right, so one of the techniques I do is when I take off the belly pans like this, I look at the pan and see if it's fresh oil, like say in a certain section on the pan. That'll kind of help you determine if it's towards the back of the engine, the front of the engine, the side of the engine. Also, you can determine, what type of fluid is actually leaking. It could be transmission fluid, it can be power steering fluid, it can be engine oil, or it can be coolant. So the belly pans are a great place to get an idea of what's going on. Then you get the engine cover off. Now we're ready to do a really good visual inspection and kind of narrow down where those oil leaks or coolant leaks or fluid leaks are. And so what we're going to do is when we pull the vehicle in, we're going to do a couple things. We're going to pay attention to any smells. So if you smell any burning oil or sweet smell like coolant, those are clues of what type of fluids are leaking. Also, when I initially start my inspections, I check my fluid levels. So this is the coolant level here. This is full. So knowing that this is full and I'm not adding coolant, so that rules out a coolant leak. You check your engine oil. If the engine oil is low, this one's checked with electronic through the steering wheel and the heads-up display. But on most cars, they have a dipstick. You would check your engine oil. If your engine oil is low, then that might be an indication of that's what's leaking. All right, so when I'm ready to do my visual inspection, I usually start at the top of the engine first because gravity will take the fluids, whatever's leaking, will take them down to the bottom. So I like to start my inspection up top, do a thorough inspection up top. I like to use a flashlight, a good high-powered flashlight, and just start looking around the perimeter and just start looking for those obvious spots where oil leaks. So when it comes down to tracking oil leaks, not all engines are created equally. So something like this old 56 pickup here, the oil leaks are really easy to find. Here's the valve cover. It's a common leak. You can see right down the edge. You can see everything. Distributor, it'll leak oil. There's a seal here at the bottom that can leak oil. You got the front cover. So the front cover and seal and crank seal are right down here. Those are really easy to see on older vehicles like this. Real common area is the rear main seal back there behind where the transmission and the engine mount up. And we can find those really easy and track those down really easy. But on a modern day car, there's a lot more stuff going on. And so I got some techniques and tips to show you how to diagnose those. As I get into the inspections, what I like to do is use a mirror like this and a flashlight. And then I can get down in here and I can look. So say if I wanted to check the leading edge of my valve cover here, the corners here, I would use my mirror. So I would use the mirror and the flashlight and kind of look down there. You can see the edge of the valve cover there, and it's dry, it's not leaking. So I would move around to the next spot and keep working my way around and check my way around. Another technique I do is I would use a cell phone like this and create a little video. So you can take a cell phone and you can put them way down in the cracks and crevices where you can't see. But the cool thing is you can create a video. So you set up your phone, you turn the flash on like this on your video, make sure it's on like this. Now, when you put it down in here, it will light up everything and you can see everything absolutely perfect. So if you use a flashlight, it'll create shadows and you won't be able to see. But if you use the flash on your camera, you can get down in here and you can see everything, and you can stick it way down there. You can push record, make a little video clip. Even though my hand is completely blocking it and I can't see, the camera is down there where I can see everything. So here's a little footage of what that would look like. So you would stick your camera down here and get it down in the crevices of everything, and you'll be able to see crystal clear without any shadows or anything like that, and you'll be able to determine where the actual oil leaks are. So you can stick it way down in places that you would never think you could get, and you can see everything crystal clear. When it comes to inspecting valve covers, so you're going to look at the lowest point. If there's any cam humps, like you'll see some will have like humps on it like that, they like to leak in the corners of valve covers. Also, if you have a vehicle that has coils, so they like to leak down the coil tubes. This one here has like a hollow piece and a hollow piece, so it can leak inside here. So you want to look down here and see if there's any oil puddling up down here, which you do not see on this vehicle here. So this vehicle does not appear to have a valve cover leak of any sign. Also, you got to be taking consideration that people spill oil when they fill it up. So if it's just a little bit of oil right here, look at the clues and see if there's any oil buildup around there. The cap itself could leak. They could have forgot the cap off of the vehicle. All those type of sorts of things. So you want to rule out that it's just something stupid like somebody spilled or a cap. Once I get my inspection done up top, now I'm going to go down below and start checking out everything below. We're underneath my car, and you can definitely tell it has an oil leak. Right here is the rack and pinion. It's electric steering on this particular car, and that oil is leaking directly onto the electric motor for the rack and the steering. And so even though this is a really relatively small oil leak, it's not a very bad one, but it's been leaking for quite some time. It's coated this on here. Now this could do some damage. This could make this motor malfunction, and I could have a steering problem. So even a small leak is something you want to take care of, especially on these modern cars. All this stuff gets on these plastic and rubber. So when the oil gets on the rubber and stuff like that, it can cause the rubber to swell and cause more and more problems. So whenever you get an oil leak, you definitely want to take care of them as soon as you possibly can, because a small problem will turn into a big problem pretty fast. So on this particular car, I got a lot of oil around the front of the oil pan here, and you can tell it's running back and running down. The engine's kind of at an angle, so it's running down and running back. So as the air flows over from the fans and everything up here, it's going to push everything to the back. So there's a little bit of oil in the back, but you can tell that that's kind of just blowback. Now I'm underneath the vehicle. I'm going to check the common areas, such as the drain plugs, and then start from the front of the motor here and then start working my way back to the back. As you can see, I got a little bit of oil right here in the corner. So we're going to determine here in a minute if that's the crank seal, oil pan, or the front cover. So we'll dig into that in just a second. So to help diagnose this particular one, I want to know if it's coming from the front crank seal or the front of the motor, or if it's the oil pan gasket itself. So I'm going to clean this up. Make it easy to diagnose, I'm going to use my Gunk brake cleaner, and I'm going to use the straw on it like this. This is the technique here. And then get it up in there and clean. As you can see, it cleans it really well. And so I'll clean around all the gaskets and stuff like that. I'll clean everything up with it. Since I'm laying down on the ground and I don't have a lot of space to get like a pressure washer or anything in here, I'm going to use the brake clean. If you have it up in the air, the engine degreaser is a great one too. So you can spray this on here and clean everything up, especially along the edges where the gaskets are, and then on the front here where the crank pulley goes. So that's right up in here. So the straw allows you to get up in there and clean all that stuff. So I'm going to take some time and I'm going to spray everything down, go in a few different spots and clean all this off. I'm going to clean off the drain plug area here to make sure that that's not leaking. So it's really common for a crush washer on a drain plug to leak. This particular car has an oil level sensor, so this is a place where it could leak. If you see back here on the back of the bell housing here, there's a little bit of oil. But right there is an inspection plug. So I'm going to take that inspection plug off, and if it's dry inside the transmission, then I know the rear main seal is not leaking and it's just the oil coming down here. So we're gonna clean all this off. You can see how fast the brake clean works to clean it off. And then you can use some compressed air and you can blow it on there and dry everything off really dry. And then you can run the vehicle and then we can double check for oil leaks. So we'll clean it off really good. And then we'll come back and we'll check for oil leaks. Definitely want to make sure you're wearing safety glasses. You don't want any of this to get in your eyes. And as you can see here, I'm just starting in the areas where I think the oil leaks are and making sure that they're thoroughly cleaned. Now I'm going to take a little time and blow everything nice and dry, make sure all the brake clean is dried up, the oil is removed, and dry everything out. And then what we'll do is we'll fire this bad boy off and we'll run it and we'll see if we can find any leaks. Another technique for those super hard to find oil leaks is may need to get yourself some UV dye and you pour it into the oil, and then you need a UV light source. This one here is really inexpensive. It's a pair of and it comes with these funky glasses to help illuminate the UV dye. So whatever brand you buy, you would follow the instructions on your bottle. They're all a little different. Sometimes they're big bottles, little bottles. So follow the instructions on that. And we're just going to pour this in the engine. Then we want to take the car for a spirited drive and really get the oil circulating through the system. Then you come back in and take the covers all off and do the inspection all over. But oil leaks can be tough to find. Sometimes you have to do it with the engine running. Search with the engine running to duplicate the leak. Sometimes it leaks when the engine's off. Sometimes it leaks when the engine's hot. Sometimes it leaks when the engine's cold. It just kind of depends on where the leak is on the engine and what type of leak it is. So we're back underneath the vehicle looking for the UV dye, and if you notice it's dark, so you have to do this without the sunlight. You have to do it in dark to get the UV dye to light up. So when you get on the dye, it'll come up in a greenish color. Sometimes it's a lot more bright and a lot more fluorescent. This one's just a very mild leak, so it's not coming up very bright, but you can see the green right here along the edge of the oil pan. So with the UV dye, I was able to determine that the oil pan itself is leaking, but I want to make sure that the crank pulley is not leaking or the front timing cover. So what I do to determine that is I take a look at the belt and the crank pulley and see if the belt has oil built up on it. A lot of times if the crank pulley is leaking, the crank seal, I should say, is leaking, the oil will be on the actual drive belt. So I'm zooming in on the crank pulley here, and if you look on the top side of the crank pulley, there's no oil above the crank pulley. So the oil would sling upwards towards the top of the crank pulley as it rotates, and you can see the drive belt itself is dry and everything below is wet. So I'm pretty confident the front crank seal is not the problem and it's not leaking, and it's only the oil pan. Right now, it's mainly looking like my oil pan is the leak here in this corner here. The crank seal looks dry because it's not on the oil is not on the drive belts. It's not above the crank seal like when it's rotating and spinning it upwards. So that's a good thing. So it's looking like pretty much just the oil pan is the culprit on this vehicle. This here has an inspection plate here for the bell housing. So now I can look inside here, and if I saw a bunch of oil inside the transmission, then I might think the rear main seal is leaking. Or, so that could be an indication that the rear main seal, especially if you have access to an inspection hole like that. So this one's really dry. There's nothing in there. This one's dry. There's nothing in there. So that leads me to believe that it's just the oil pan. Wanted to highlight a few other things to look out for. So as you can see around this oil filter on this pickup truck, you can see that film of dirt. That's kind of a telltale sign of a leak. Some other areas you want to look at is the transmission pan. So you want to follow the pans around the perimeter, and then if you look, they have a cooler. So this line right here that runs from the back of the transmission all the way up to the front is another potential leak. And then the rear tail shafts where the drive shafts go through, that's a potential leak. The transmission and engine coolers will often run into the radiator, and they have these lines. So you want to follow these around and make sure none of these are leaking, and just put your hands on it, put your flashlight on it, and just give everything a good check. Now that we determined where our oil leaks are, before I do any repairs, I like to clean the engines. So I'll clean the engines up thoroughly with using degreasers like this. I'll spray these engines down and we'll clean the engine. That way when we take these engines apart, all that grease and grime and debris doesn't fall down in the engine, and it just makes it that much nicer to work on the vehicle. And of course, those belly pans are going to be nasty as can be, so the Gunk engine degreaser works great for breaking that down. I just spray a heavy dose of that on it, let it set up for a couple minutes, and then we get the pressure washer out and we go to town. All right guys, there you have it. That's how you would diagnose the oil leaks on your car, truck. I'd like to thank our sponsor of the day, Gunk, for sponsoring the video and supplying all the supplies we use to diagnose the video and get everything cleaned up. If you guys are interested in adding this to your collection, I will leave links down in the description. I'd like to thank you guys for watching and encourage you to subscribe.